The elevator carried me to the executive floor slower than usual, or maybe it was just my heart dragging its feet. In my hands was a thin manila envelope and the black notebook that had stayed with me for 12 years. The elevator's mirror reflected a 38-year-old engineer with her hair pulled back and dark circles earned from too many nights fixing the traffic coordination system. I am Olivia Hart, the person my coworkers half-jokingly call the quiet brain behind Northbridge Dynamics. I have always carried that notebook like an extension of myself, a place where every idea, every sketch, and every sleepless night lived. When the doors opened, the executive floor looked like a different world. The carpet was so thick, my footsteps disappeared into it. Floor to ceiling windows caught the pale Seattle sky. The receptionist greeted me with that perfectly trained, emotionless tone. Up here, everything gleamed and felt curated, while the lab downstairs, where I work, was all tangled cables, strong coffee, and the constant clatter of keyboards. The distance between the people who build and the people who sit behind glass had never felt sharper. I knocked on the door of Ethan Klein, Vice President of Innovation Strategy. Early 40s, always immaculate, hair slicked back, navy tie knotted in perfect symmetry. He has this tiny habit I have watched for years. Every time he lies or feels cornered, he adjusts his tie. Today, he looked up at me with a smile full of the confidence of a man who believes he is in control. "What is on fire this morning, Olivia?" he asked, half joking, half mocking. I did not answer. I simply placed the envelope on his desk. "That is my resignation." His eyebrows lifted. He opened it with a slow, leisurely motion, like he was about to enjoy some light entertainment. When he got through the first lines, he actually laughed. "Starting over in this industry at 38. Good luck." His eyes skimmed over me, the way someone looks at an expired product. Then he turned toward the glass wall and called out to his assistant, "Jenna, Olivia is resigning. Think we should give her the old lab chair as a parting gift." The comment sounded light, but anyone in this field would taste the bitterness. I did not respond to his sarcasm. I just said one sentence. "Check the second page." His expression tightened. He pulled out the remaining sheet, an internal policy printout on intellectual property rights for after-hours independent projects. A section was clearly highlighted. Any systems, models, or algorithms created independently outside of billable work belong to the employee unless there is a separate written agreement. And at the bottom was a familiar signature, his signature, signed 3 years ago during a rushed audit cycle when he had been so eager to move things along he barely read anything before signing. The smile vanished. His hand drifted to his tie. There it was, the habit I knew by heart. "What are you implying?" His voice sank. I stood straight, met his eyes. "I am saying the strategic platform you keep calling Northbridge's foundation is not entirely Northbridge's." There was no threat in my tone, just a truth delivered as softly as if I had rehearsed it for years. The door opened suddenly. An HR staffer stepped in with a stack of documents. She took one look at us and immediately sensed the tension. When she caught the phrase Section 7.3 from the paper on his desk, her eyes flickered. Recognition, alarm. She got his signature and left at once. I knew one thing. In America, if an HR employee hears that phrase, whatever is happening travels through a company faster than any internal memo. I picked up my black notebook, fingertips brushing the worn edges. 12 years of myself lived in those pages. Rough sketches from nights I hunted a data glitch, frantic notes from 3 in the morning when Denver's system crashed, little reminders to rest that I never listened to. I was ready to go, but before I opened the door, I paused. "We will meet again," I said, steady and calm, "just not in the same company." I stepped into the hallway without looking back. The door clicked shut behind me, soft but final. Down in the parking garage, I slid into the driver's seat. The notebook rested on my lap, the empty envelope beside me. Through the rearview mirror, I saw the building, its glass reflecting the gray sky and the conference rooms I had spent my youth sustaining. A strange mix of relief and ache washed over me. Not the ache of losing something, but the ache of realizing I stayed far too long. I started the engine and merged into the traffic flowing beneath systems I once helped design. This time, I did not look back. I knew this was not a spontaneous decision. It was the culmination of an entire journey, and today I was finally stepping into the next chapter. Ethan did not know it yet, but my departure was not ending with a resignation letter. It would reach straight into the foundation he stood on. With my hands on the wheel, feeling the city moving under algorithms I once wrote, I felt something I had not felt in years: freedom. And if you have listened this far, I would love to know where you are listening from. Drop a comment below. Every story means more when someone walks it with you. And if you enjoy these journeys of taking back what is yours, hit subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. This is only the beginning. When my car merged into the main lane, the traffic flowed beneath the coordination system I once helped build, and a memory from 6 years ago hit me so sharply I eased off the gas. Back then, I was 32, younger, hungrier, and still believed that doing good work was enough for recognition to naturally find its way to you. Northbridge was still a mid-sized company then. I had been there 6 years, long enough to become the one everyone in the lab called when a traffic simulation collapsed. When the full fellowship offer from Stanford's Autonomous Systems program arrived, I just stood there in the hallway of my old apartment building, stunned. I printed the letter, pinned it to my refrigerator with a worn magnet. Every time I opened the fridge for milk, I saw my dream glowing right in front of me. Being the first in my family to earn a college degree, Stanford was more than a career opportunity. It felt like a symbol for everyone who came before me. But that joy lasted less than a week. That day, Ethan, who was still a director back then, made one of his rare appearances in the lab. I was standing in front of a broken root simulation, nerves stretched thin. He placed a hand on the edge of my desk. "Got a moment, Olivia? Come to the small conference room with me." We sat in a quiet glass room. Ethan crossed his arms and studied me with a look that mixed judgment and calculation. "I heard about your letter," he began, voice light, as if talking about the weather. "Stanford is big, but are you sure you fit the ivory tower life?" I stayed silent. He continued immediately. "Olivia, you are changing this city every single day. Not in 3 years. Not in 10 years. Right now." Then he turned his laptop toward me. On the screen was a career roadmap. He spoke through each line as he had rehearsed it. In 12 months, he would push me up to principal architect. My name would appear on the new patents. Smart mobility keynotes would reference the heart model. He said it with a confidence that made you want to believe him. It was a very clear proposal, direct, aimed squarely at my need to be seen. I had worked in the shadows for years. Simulations I wrote had once saved an entire district from a chain reaction of accidents. But in every congratulatory email, my name was buried in a long list. No one saw me in the lab at 3 in the morning, drinking black coffee while a model ran wrong. Ethan's promise felt like the first time someone finally aimed a spotlight at the right place. He said professors could give me knowledge, but Northbridge could give me real impact. I wanted to believe it, and part of me did. That night I sat alone, looking at the Stanford letter glowing under the kitchen light. I imagined myself in school again, living in modern labs, working with brilliant minds. But then I imagined staying here, building a system an entire city depended on. I told myself a line in a journal article meant less than helping thousands of people move safely through their day. I opened my laptop and wrote the email declining the offer. I believe the work I am doing here creates a more direct impact. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. In the years that followed, the workload climbed like a mountain. I monitored the system every winter, ran blizzard simulations until midnight to prevent mass collisions. I once rewrote an entire traffic priority module in 5 hours to keep Denver's system from collapsing. After each update, I wrote the date and time in my black notebook, a quiet reminder that even if no one saw it, I knew what I had built. The company sent the usual congratulatory messages. The whole team did great. No one mentioned me. I never reacted. I just flipped to a new page and kept writing. A year later, Ethan appeared in an industry magazine praising Northbridge's smart coordination platform. He kept saying, "Our team," but the photo was only him standing in front of the simulation board. I had been in that room during the shoot, but they had cropped me out like I was never there. When the light ahead turned red, I slowed down and unlocked my phone. In the folder named What If was the Stanford email I had declined, still sitting there, never deleted. I reread the last line. I believe the work I am doing here creates a more direct impact. 6 years ago, I read that sentence with pride. Now it cut into me, like a reminder that sometimes the decisions we make with the most faith are the ones that wound us the deepest. I put the phone down. The light turned green. I drove forward, realizing that everything did not start with the resignation letter I handed in this morning. It started with the choice I once believed was right. And if there is one thing I am certain of now, it is that I will not let that mistake define the rest of my life. That night, after driving home and leaving my shoes by the door, I meant to lie down for a few minutes. But a notification lit up my phone, pulling me back into reality faster than I expected. Northbridge was live streaming an investor presentation. The topic was so familiar it sent a faint chill across my skin. Evolution of Urban Traffic Intelligence. I sat on the sofa and opened the video. Ethan's face filled the screen, hair perfectly groomed, dark suit, a smile so polished it looked pre-programmed. Behind him was the three-dimensional traffic simulation board, the same one I had built the very first version of 6 years ago. For the first few minutes, I still thought maybe this time he would say we more than I. Maybe he would finally look back and remember that no one builds a system like this alone. But that hope died the moment he opened his mouth. For years, I spent countless nights designing the core predictive engine. My eyebrows drew together. I waited for him to add to my team. He did not. He kept talking in the first person, smooth and flawless, the way someone speaks after practicing in front of a mirror. I built the early prototypes long before this industry even realized the need for adaptive prediction. I was alone in the lab during storm nights, just me and the code. I froze for a few seconds, not out of instant anger, but because an emptiness spread through me like someone had pulled the backbone out of my memories. I remembered those storm nights clearly. They were real, and Ethan was not there for any of them. When the video ended, I stayed still, then replayed it and scrubbed to that line. Nights alone in the lab, just me and the code. I paused right on the frame where he tilted his head, placed a hand over his chest as if sharing a painful memory. I laughed. A dry, snapping sound like brittle plastic breaking. Sure, alone. And I was, what, a shadow in the room? I did not know why, but I got up, walked straight into my home office, and opened the personal hard drive I rarely touched. The familiar folder sat in the corner of the screen. Heart Me Private. I had named it years ago, unsure whether I would ever need it, but kept it as a backup of my own history. I opened each file, old version logs, notes from 2 in the morning. One voice memo started playing the moment I clicked it. My voice came through, tired but alert. Note to self, do not drink coffee after 11. Hands shake, code runs fast, heart runs faster. I smiled. A real smile for the first time in hours. Pieces of my memories returned, sharper than any polished presentation Ethan could deliver. While I was still looking through old files, an email notification popped up. Sent by mistake, from a marketing assistant. The subject sent a faint, cold line down my spine. Draft. The mind behind Northbridge, Ethan Klein. I opened the attachment. The draft began with a line that made me go still. Innovation is clarity under pressure. I knew that line very well. I had written it in my notebook 3 years ago at 3 in the morning while designing a special anti-congestion model for the outer districts. I wrote it to keep myself going. I flipped to that page immediately. The black notebook opened to the line, written in a slanted hand, ink smudged slightly from when I placed my coffee too close. I looked back at the screen. The draft described the exact story. Same moment, same imagery. Only one detail had changed. In the draft, the person in the lab on that stormy night was Ethan. A pressure hit my chest, deep and sudden. Not because he copied a line, but because the story was being rewritten, piece by piece, until my name disappeared completely. This was no longer about stealing credit in a meeting. This was the deliberate erasure of a person from a narrative he planned to bring to the public. I sat down and drew a long breath. Then I created a new folder. I named it Evidence Heart. This time, I was not saving out of habit. I was saving to protect myself. I began dragging files into it: version logs, technical drawings, voice memos, emails I had sent him explaining the model, the policy file with his signature from the audit cycle, even the hand drawn diagrams, the forgotten scraps. Everything was time stamped. Each time I wondered whether I was overreacting, I remembered the line in the draft: nights alone in the lab. No, I was not overreacting. I gathered the files. When I was about to close the drawer, my eyes stopped at a desk drawer. Inside, between old cables and pens that had run dry, was a thin black business card. Maya Ortiz, Chief Technology Officer of Solace Quantum. I remembered clearly the moment she gave it to me at a tech conference 2 years ago. I had presented in a small breakout session that no press cared about. But Maya had walked up afterward, looked me straight in the eye, and said in a steady voice, "When you want to work somewhere people actually know what you just did, call me." Back then, I thought she was being polite. But tonight, staring at the draft Ethan was preparing to turn into a best-selling story, her words returned with a quiet, firm knock in my mind. I opened my laptop. An empty email window came up. My hands hovered over the keys for a long moment. Then I typed 2 words: still interested. I watched the cursor blink after the second word. Then I hit send. No hesitation, no second guessing, no more waiting for Ethan to remember my name. For the first time in years, I saw a different path open, not through empty promises, not through cropped photos and magazines, but through the evidence I had kept from those long nights Ethan claimed as his own. I turned off the office light. In the dark, the hard drive sat quietly on the desk. But this time it was no longer just a place storing memories. It had become proof of the truth, and I knew I would need it. I left Seattle the night before, but the truth is, this trip began with a phone call, not a plane ticket. After I sent the message, still interested, I did not expect Maya to reply right away. But 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Bay Area, location. Her voice came through like she had just stepped out of an important meeting, yet still chose to give me her full attention. Olivia Hart, I received your email. Her tone was low, precise, never wasting a word. Tell me, did you send that question because you truly want change, or because you are running away from something? I stayed quiet for a few seconds before answering. I am not running. It is just that for the first time, I want to stand in the place that actually belongs to me. On the other end, Maya did not sigh, did not comfort me, did not soften anything. She simply said one sentence: "Then fly down here tomorrow. I want to see what you have with my own eyes, and I do not make decisions based on assumptions." Her voice was direct and fair in a way that made me book a flight before midnight. The next morning, I arrived at the headquarters of Solace Quantum in San Francisco. The building looked nothing like Northbridge. No bronze statues, no walls filled with awards, no glossy display screens showcasing corporate achievements. Instead, everything was open. Labs lined the hallways. Whiteboards overflowed with diagrams. Groups of engineers debated algorithms like the rhythm of the world depended on it. And there was something in the air that Northbridge had lost long ago, the feeling that people were building something real. Maya waited for me in a glass meeting room at the end of the corridor. She looked exactly as I remembered from that conference 2 years ago. Hair tied low, a light jacket, no unnecessary jewelry. Only a purple felt pen was placed on the table in front of her. She studied me for a few seconds. "You got here quickly," I said. I did not want to hesitate anymore. I placed the USB drive and the scanned documents on the table. Maya did not open them right away. She rolled the USB between her fingers, like someone used to gauging the weight of a problem. "If all of this is real," she said slowly, "then he might have just signed the shovel that will bury his own career." The way she said it made me laugh for the first time in weeks. She motioned for 2 others to come in. One was the head of legal, the other was a source authentication specialist. Neither looked surprised. Neither asked questions. They moved like all of this had been expected. That alone eased something in my chest, as if I was no longer the only one who saw the blind spot in this industry. They opened each file. version logs, 2 in the morning voice memos, long emails I had sent to Ethan explaining processing blocks, the policy sheet with his signature. The technician verified the timestamps in historical order. No file had been altered. No overlap was accidental. Everything was system history. History I had built. When they finished, Maya leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. Olivia, this is not just evidence, this is your technical fingerprint, and it predates everything Northbridge filed. I swallowed the pressure rising in my throat. Maya leaned forward again, voice steady. There are two paths for you. One, Solace wants you to lead the new coordination platform, a role equal to Vice President of Engineering with full technical authority. No one will put their name above yours. I held my breath without realizing it. Two, if you want to challenge the patents Northbridge filed, Solace will support you legally from beginning to end. But the decision is yours. No one here will use you to strike at a rival. No one will turn you into a weapon. She pressed her palms to the table. If you want your name back, we stand with you. If you do not want to fight anymore, we still stand with you. The only person who needs to stand for you is you. That sentence hit my heart like a jolt, as if someone had nudged me toward a path I had known was mine but never dared to step onto. That night in a Soma hotel room, I sat on the bed with my laptop open and stared at the contract from Solace without being able to sign it. I was afraid, not of Ethan, but of the industry whispering that I betrayed the company that once fed me. Afraid of labels, afraid of the rumors. But I was also afraid of something bigger, afraid of continuing to live like the shadow of my own life. I video called my younger sister. The screen lit up her dim room. I said, if I stay silent, life is easier. But if I stay silent again, then I am no longer myself. She looked at me for a long time before saying one sentence. You have been quiet long enough. It is time you say the one thing left to be said. When the call ended, I opened the contract again, rested my hand on the trackpad, and signed. My chest felt lighter instantly. The next morning, I went back to Northbridge to clear my desk. No one stopped me. A few people glanced at me with awkward sympathy, as if they wanted to wish me luck but did not dare. I packed the familiar things: my notebook, my coffee mug, a few old printouts. I left behind a few small decorations. They belonged to the version of Olivia who once tried to blend into this place. That version died the night Ethan claimed my stories as his. Before leaving my desk, I wrote a new post-it and stuck it to the side of the monitor. Turn off ghost mode. I stood straight, taking one last look at the room where I had spent nearly half my life. Then I turned and walked out of the building with an ease I had never felt before. For the first time, I did not leave like a ghost drifting out of the walls. This time, I carried my own name with me, and I knew the fight to reclaim it had only just begun. Right after I left Northbridge and HR finished my separation paperwork, I thought I would get a few quiet days to adjust to my new life. But only 2 hours after my access badge was deactivated, an email appeared in my inbox, as if it had been drafted ahead of time. The subject line came in the familiar bold type from Northbridge Legal: unauthorized use of proprietary systems. I opened it. The content was longer than a mortgage contract, a wall of legal phrases crafted to overwhelm: misappropriation, breach of confidentiality, unauthorized retention. Every section hinted that I had stolen the company's intellectual property and warned of serious legal consequences if I continued using any technical material that was not permitted. I was not surprised. If Ethan had already rewritten the story in his favor, reshaping the paperwork to match the fiction would be his next move. Less than 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Ethan's name. I let it ring almost to the end before picking up. Olivia, he began, voice soft as a sigh. I heard what happened. Are you all right? I stayed quiet. He shifted into the tone he used with people he thought he could steer emotionally. He reminded me of nights I monitored the system. The time I ran a storm simulation until 3 in the morning. The night the team fixed the Tacoma issue. He sounded almost nostalgic. Olivia, you do not need to make this harder than it has to be. You are just exhausted. You made a rash decision. I still said nothing. His tone changed. Soft turn to condescending. Who in this industry do you think they will believe? A vice president with a spotless track record, or an engineer who quit right before a funding round? You are destroying your own reputation. I closed my eyes and listened to the sound of each mask falling. Ethan continued, this time fully shifting into threats. If you push this, every door will close on you. No one hires troublemakers in this field. Think carefully. I am trying to help you. I hung up before he could say another word. Some conversations only have one correct ending point, and I reached it. I opened my laptop and drafted a reply to the Northbridge legal team. Only a few lines. I cited the exact clause on self-directed research from the internal policy, the clause Ethan had signed 3 years ago. I highlighted the section confirming employee ownership for independent after-hours work outside the billable scope. At the end, I wrote one sentence. I am simply following the internal policy issued by the company. I copied Maya on the email and sent it. The reaction inside Northbridge was faster than I expected. Within an hour, the Slack channel named All Hands began to buzz. Rumors spread instantly, as if everyone had been waiting for something to fill the afternoon. Some said I was difficult to work with. Some said I was too ambitious. Some implied I left because I failed to secure a promotion. In the channel named Water Cooler, the tone was looser, but just as sharp. Someone posted a blinking red light GIF with the caption, Northbridge's mood. Another person posted a meme of a car stuck in an intersection with the text, when the predictive engine fails, but the PR engine keeps running. Classic tech dark humor. Sarcasm as a survival instinct. But the funniest thing came from a mid-level manager I had worked with on a few projects. He accidentally sent me a Slack message meant for someone next to him. If this thing blows up for real, I should probably update my LinkedIn. I raised an eyebrow. 1 second later, he added, Sorry, wrong window. I replied with one sentence. It is fine. You should update your LinkedIn. The message disappeared, probably deleted the moment he read my reply. But I knew he understood something. I was no longer in a position to fear anyone there. That afternoon, I joined my first meeting with Solace's legal team. Maya opened the session with one line. The first step is not reacting in the way Northbridge wants you to react. We mapped out a clear strategy. Do not argue online. Do not respond to any media outlet if they reach out. Do not reply to anyone stirring drama in Northbridge's Slack. Do not let this turn into a two-sided spectacle. Solace's attorney explained that public arguments only benefit the person trying to paint themselves as the victim. We needed something stronger, a file trail that was clear, chronological, time-stamped, and simple enough that not only the patent board, but the general public could see who was telling the truth. Maya ended the meeting with a sentence that made the room fall silent. No battle is ever won by noise. We will help you win by clarity. I leaned back, feeling a wave of relief move through me. Not because Solace was backing me, but because for the first time, I was not carrying the weight alone. When the meeting ended, I gathered my papers. Outside the glass, the San Francisco sunset washed the buildings in orange. I knew Ethan would not stop at a single warning email, but I knew something else even more clearly. This time, he was not the one controlling the narrative. I stepped into the hallway, feeling myself walking between two worlds. One world trying to pull me back through threats, and another opening ahead, where my name would not be erased from any model ever again. This was only Ethan's first counterstrike, but it was also the first time I truly saw it. I had chosen the right side, my own. I thought that after Northbridge's first attempt at retaliation, things would quiet down for at least a few weeks. But their silent panic turned out to be stronger than I expected. A former engineer messaged me saying leadership had ordered the technical team to clean up every trace of me in the system. It did not surprise me. Northbridge had always cared more about image than truth. They began by editing old logs. Commits once labeled HART were renamed into meaningless abbreviations. Some modules were given abstract technical names to erase any connection to me. I heard they even added an extra abstraction layer to hide the original structure, as if renaming a variable could rewrite history. But the core, the exact section containing the modules I had stabilized the most, they would not touch. No one dared. Everyone knew one wrong line could send an entire city into chaos. Maybe that was why I felt a mix of amusement and a faint kind of sadness. They wanted to erase me, yet they were afraid to touch what I had built. 3 weeks later, the thing they tried to avoid finally began. At first, it was only small reports from Tacoma's traffic system. A former colleague messaged me, "You should see this." The congestion predictor jumped to 95% at 3 in the morning, a time when the entire city had maybe a few trucks on the road. The next day, more cities reported issues. Forecasts are completely out of pattern. Seattle flagged a risk of localized gridlock on a Sunday. Portland suggested a detour through a suburban cemetery to reduce urban pressure. Drivers were confused, as if the system had chugged too much caffeine without resetting itself. Then a TikTok went viral. The video showed a major intersection in Spokane. 4 directions stuck on red for 2 full minutes. No car moved. In the middle, a police officer spun in circles, waving his arms like an NPC glitching out. The person recording spoke in a dead, serious voice. "I think the AI is having a mental breakdown." The video hit nearly 3 million views in 4 hours. I watched it several times, not sure whether to laugh or sigh. Later that afternoon, one of the engineers sent me a screenshot. On a black console background, a bright red error line flashed. Missing core module HARTV 3.9. I stared at it for a long moment. HARTV 3.9 was the version I wrote on a stormy night after trying 12 different approaches that refused to stabilize. I named it because I happened to be listening to Vivaldi's Four Seasons and wanted to reward myself with something that sounded elegant. I never imagined that silly name would become the heartbeat module, as the team called it, because when it ran, the system flowed smoothly, and when it did not, everything stalled. That error meant one thing. They had tried to hide it, rename it, or remove it, but the system simply could not run without it. And the funniest part was that no one truly understood how it worked except me. Meanwhile, at Solace Quantum, my life was moving in the opposite direction. My team and I were building the Heart Adaptive Grid, a completely new architecture that reused nothing from the old system. The idea was to create a traffic brain that learned over time, free from the compromises I had been forced into at Northbridge. The whole team worked with a focus and excitement I had not felt in years. I was glad to know I was not taking the path of grabbing old code or feeding off revenge. I was moving forward, building something better. Ethan, meanwhile, had not collapsed, or at least, he tried not to look like he had. One Monday afternoon, a former mid-level manager sent me a message. "They are in an emergency meeting." He attached a short audio clip. Ethan's voice sounded firmer than usual. "We do not need Olivia. The system became what it is thanks to the entire team." But then a junior engineer asked, "Can you explain the operating principle of HARTV 3.9? He went silent for 3 seconds. Papers rustled. Then he said, "That is too technical. Not necessary for this meeting." I could picture the entire scene clearly. People in the room exchanging knowing looks. Ethan was trying to keep his face steady, as if everything was under control. That evening, sitting in my office at Solace, I opened TikTok and rewatched the intersection clip. I laughed out loud. The police officer spinning in circles looked so much like a malfunctioning NPC, it was almost unbelievable. But when the laughter faded, something else settled under my ribs. A quiet sadness. I had spent more than a decade of my life preventing moments like that. I had written every line of code, tested every simulation, stayed up through too many nights to ensure no driver ever had to face chaos because of something I built. And now, while they tried to erase my name, what they got was a system stumbling like a wild animal, losing its sense of direction. I closed my laptop. The chaos inside Northbridge did not satisfy me. It only made one truth painfully clear. I had left at the right time, and for the right reason. I always thought that if I ever returned to a major industry event, it would be as a quiet engineer standing backstage, watching from the shadows. But then the invitation from the National Conference on Smart Infrastructure appeared in my inbox with one short line. Invitation for Olivia Hart, guest of honor from Solace Quantum. I reread it several times. Guest of honor was not a title they handed out lightly. It was how the industry acknowledged someone who had touched something with real weight. And the fact that it arrived right after the wave of leaked reports about Northbridge's signal failures told me that people at the top had already begun piecing the story together. The conference center was in Denver, a tall glass building with long rows of posters lining the entrance. At the center was Ethan's face with the caption Keynote Speaker, Building the Future of Urban Intelligence. I looked at the poster for a moment longer than necessary, then walked inside. The organizers led me to a discreet but deliberately prominent row near the stage. The lights cast a warm glow, making the space feel both grand and distant. I sat, placed my small notebook on my lap, and felt a kind of calm I had not known before. I had spent years standing behind others, so sitting this close to the stage felt both unfamiliar and freeing. Ethan stepped onto the stage right on time, adjusting his tie out of habit, the first sign he was more tense than he pretended to be. The opening slide appeared. A glowing city, smooth traffic paths, polished icons. I knew it was all surface. No algorithm runs on icons. He began with his usual confident cadence. We spent many years developing the newest predictive engine, creating the foundation for modern cities. I had heard that line too many times. He tried to mimic the way I had once explained concepts internally, using metaphors and small comparisons that helped people understand complex systems. But it all sounded half-formed, lacking the logic, the breadth, the lived struggle of someone who had stayed up night after night fixing each flawed line of code. Someone in the row below whispered, "This feels like last year's talk copied and pasted." The person next to them nodded. I saw Ethan's shoulders stiffen slightly as if he had heard it too. When his presentation ended, the questions began. A graduate student, maybe in her early 20s, stood up. Her voice was steady and clear. "I want to ask whether the original model was built by engineer Olivia Hart. I saw her name in the commit log of the early version." The room shifted all at once, hundreds of people drawing in breath at the same moment. Ethan froze for a single second, then adjusted his tie. "Of course, it was a team effort," he said. "My role was to guide and direct." She had not even sat down when another person stood, an older researcher. "I attended a closed meeting 2 years ago. Olivia was the one who presented the model's core principle. I remember it clearly. The air in the room cooled instantly. Ethan began talking about teamwork, leadership, and vision. No one asked further. No one wanted to prolong the discomfort. The applause at the end of his keynote was thin, short, stripped of enthusiasm. Then it was my turn. When the host introduced the title Chief Technology Officer of Solace Quantum, the audience stirred. I walked onto the stage. I did not look for Ethan, though I knew exactly where he sat. I began in a calm voice. 12 years ago, I sketched this model on a napkin in a corner coffee shop. Today, it has a version where I no longer stand behind anyone. I played the Heart Adaptive Grid Simulation, the new version, smooth, self-adjusting, untouched by the failures the press had been dissecting about Northbridge. The model flowed like breath, shifting load in real time, and the room quieted with the kind of silence that only true focus creates. "I want to revisit the past for a moment," I said, then changed the slide. On the screen was a photo of an old notebook page, the paper slightly yellowed. My handwritten line in black ink is still clear. "Innovation is clarity under pressure." Next to it was the original algorithm diagram, drawn in quick strokes from a long night. I advanced to the next slide. It showed an excerpt from Ethan's book draft. I had hidden the title. Only the paragraph remained, almost identical to my writing, except he had replaced the word "I" with himself. I spoke slowly, steadily. "The line on the left is my handwriting from 4 years ago. The line on the right is from a manuscript where I was not mentioned." The room went still. 1 beat, 2 beats. Then a low ripple of murmurs spread like a wave. I did not look at Ethan, but I felt the panic tightening the air below the stage. He was probably wondering how the draft had leaked, and whether he had any escape path left. I ended with one final line. "I am not here to tear anyone down. I am here so that the system you study, teach, and deploy carries the correct name of the person who built it. From today on, that name is Hart, and it will no longer be written in invisible ink." The applause began from the back, slow, firm. Then it rolled forward, filling the room. Some people stood, some nodded. I looked down. Ethan sat in the front row, face pale, hand clenched, and for the first time, unable to smile. I left the stage while the applause was still rising, not to bask in it, but because I knew a crucial chapter had just closed, and a new one had begun right here. Leaving the conference, I thought I would finally get a few quiet days to breathe, but the world outside was moving faster than I expected. That same night, tech outlets began releasing analysis pieces one after another. From Wired, Protocol, and Ars Technica to podcasts that specialize in artificial intelligence. Twitter, or X now, exploded in the most literal sense of the word. Hundreds of posts with the hashtag Hart versus Northbridge appeared within hours. Reddit had a thread nearly 4,000 comments long, where engineers, students, and people in the field dug through commit histories and compared timestamps between Northbridge's system and the files I referenced during the conference. What I did not anticipate was the speed of the truth. When a technical story reaches the point where the entire industry feels the need to weigh in, it is like a door being kicked open. There is no closing it again. About 2 days later, I received an email from someone I never thought would reach out to me. Robert Keene, a former in-house counsel at Northbridge. The subject line had only 2 words: apologies. In the email, he wrote plainly, "I am sorry I did not protect you. I was instructed to alter records to replace the real inventor with an executive. I never agreed, but I never fought hard enough either. I do not want to stay silent anymore." Attached was a scanned document. When I opened it, I saw the original patent file from 6 years ago, untouched, unedited. My name appeared clearly in the first inventor slot, Olivia Hart. Ethan's name was nowhere on it. I sat still for several seconds. It was not a triumph, not anger, just a deep quiet, as someone had finally placed the first stone back into the foundation after years of trying to pry it loose. But that was only the beginning. The next day, a former engineer I had mentored in my last months at Northbridge sent me a video. He wrote, "You need to see this." The clip was short, maybe 5 minutes, pulled from an internal camera. It was from a closed meeting 2.5 years ago. The same meeting where I had spent nearly 3 hours explaining the operating principle of the predictive model. In the video, I was standing at the board, pen in hand, breaking down every node, every interaction, every feedback algorithm. And Ethan, he sat beside me with his arms crossed, nodding the way someone nods when they want to appear informed. Every time a summary was needed, he added 1 or 2 vague sentences, then told me to continue with the details. The camera captured everything. Undeniable, impossible to reinterpret. It was what any American would call 2 words. Holy shit. A journal entry can be questioned. A log file can be dismissed as outdated. But internal video is cold. Absolute truth. When I forwarded all the evidence to Solace's legal team, they did not comment much. They only asked, "Olivia, are you ready for this to move into the formal stage?" I nodded. A few days later, the Federal Patent Board sent an official notice. My filing had been accepted. They would freeze all patents related to Northbridge's coordination model until the true inventor claim was verified. My name was at the top of the reconsideration list. On the very day I received the letter, word spread that the Northbridge board had summoned Ethan to a closed session. A friend still inside messaged me. "He is really panicking now. They asked him to explain every line of code he claimed to have created." And he could not answer. I did not feel happy or sad. I just felt another thin layer of fog lifting. But Ethan never gave up easily. He had always been the type who knew how to land a final blow, the kind of person raised on power. That evening, my phone rang. His name appeared. I hesitated for 1 second, then answered, "Olivia." His voice was softer than I had heard in years. "I do not want this to go any further." I stayed silent. He continued, "I admit you are talented. I admit Northbridge failed to acknowledge you. But this is getting too big. You have already won. You do not need to drag it out," I answered quietly. "I win when my name is on the paperwork." He let out a slow breath. Then came what he called a settlement offer. It sounded exactly like corporate damage control. A large payout, a symbolic fellow title to acknowledge my work, a promise to correct the history internally, on the condition that I withdraw my claim and stop everything publicly. We both know you do not need to take this fight this far, he said. This will make everyone look bad, including you. I heard the fear in his voice. It was not the voice of someone in control. It was the voice of someone who realized the ground under his feet was cracking. I answered calmly, without anger. I do not care whose face is saved. I care about the truth. If you wanted to fix this with money or empty titles, you are too late. He said nothing else. The call ended with a short exhale, then complete silence. A few days later, one of the biggest tech articles of the week appeared with a headline splashed across the front page. Who really built Northbridge's traffic brain? The image was an AI brain, half in the dark, half emerging into light, with the word heart in bold. Looking at it, I did not feel pride or victory. I only felt a story being put back together, piece by piece. And every piece was finally landing where it was meant to be. A few months passed after the headlines erupted and then faded, the way every media storm eventually does. Loud at first, relentless, and then leaving the ground quieter, but never the same. I did not follow the news, but it still slipped into conversations at coffee shops, into groups of engineers chatting after work, into the corners of small industry meetups. Northbridge was restructuring. Ethan, from what I heard, had been suspended or shifted into some kind of internal advisor role with no power. No one said it outright, but everyone understood the situation had reached a level even he could not contain. I did not feel triumphant hearing it. It felt more like an old wooden door finally closing on its own, no longer stuck on its hinges. In my new office at Solace, I lived at a different pace. I was 38, but for the first time in my career, I did not feel like I was racing the way I had at 28, trying to earn a place in a room that felt too crowded. My mornings no longer started with urgent notifications, emergency meetings demanding a fix in 30 minutes, or the sense that someone was watching to see whether I could produce something useful. On the screen in front of me was Heart One, the next generation coordination platform. A clean system, transparent, and every commit tagged clearly. Who designed it, who reviewed it, who tested it, who approved it. No ghosts, no invisible hands putting someone else's name on my work. I was leading more than 40 engineers toward a completely new architecture, and the best part was this. Every time a major change came up, I was the one people asked, not the one people consulted for show. One quiet morning, I opened my desk drawer to look for a document. Amid the neat stack of folders, a thick cream envelope stood out in a way that told me instantly it did not belong to Solace. The handwriting across the top stopped me in place. Oh, Heart. I recognized it. Slightly tilted, evenly spaced, the horizontal strokes a bit stiff, the handwriting of someone always trying to appear certain. I sat down and opened the envelope slowly, as if opening a doorway to a time I was not sure I wanted to revisit. Inside was a letter written in black ink. Olivia, I do not know where to begin. Maybe I should be direct. For years, I told myself that the person on stage is the one who deserves the name. I convinced myself leadership mattered more than code, that the person who could tell the story owned the story. I kept reading. The tone was familiar enough that I could almost hear Ethan's voice. I know you built the foundation. I know that every version, every night, the system was close to crashing, and you were the one who stayed until morning to fix it. But I treated that as a reward for my position. I did not think I was taking anything. But I did. One section was crossed out. Then he continued. I am not asking for forgiveness. I just want to say this. Without you, that system would never have existed. I set the letter down and leaned back. I did not cry. My chest did not tighten. My hands did not shake. I simply exhaled softly, like releasing a book I had carried too long, a book I no longer needed. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer beside the Heart One blueprint packet. The two had nothing in common, yet side by side they showed me the entire span of my life, past and future, mistakes and growth, what had been hidden and what now stood in the open. I thought to myself, it is not your apology that makes me whole. It is the fact that before you wrote this letter, I had already found my own place. When I stood and walked to the large window at the front of my office, the city below looked like a long, steady river of movement. Cars flowed cleanly, few horns, little chaos. A digital billboard in the distance played a short demo of Heart 1 beside the Solace Quantum logo. The light from it reflected faintly across the glass and onto my face. Not bright in a dramatic way, but bright enough to show me the road I was on. From the hallway came hurried footsteps. A young engineer jogged past, poked his head into my door, and grinned. Boss, can I rename the Slack channel Ghost Mode to Heart Mode? I laughed, the kind that felt real and light. Go ahead, as long as everyone knows who turns the switch. He laughed and disappeared around the corner. I returned to my desk and turned off the screen displaying the latest lines of code. The final blocks of Heart 1 glowed in their own quiet way. Not loud, not flashy, just clear, and carrying the names of everyone who built them. In my mind, a voice rose gently, the voice of myself, but calmer than it had ever been. For 12 years, Olivia let someone else tell her story. Today, she wrote it herself, with one small but essential detail. The author's name was no longer hidden.